there it is. Floor is yours, Micah. Thank you.
All right, awesome. Thank you. And thank you, Marco, for agreeing to switch. I'm in the US, so still middle of our day, and my daughter's got a football match here in a little bit. I want to get to that. Um, so yeah, my name is Micah Bly. I like to work on software. I'm not a hardware guy, so that last project looked amazing. Um, but I'm here to talk about software and about one of my favorite computers of all time, which is a Commodore 700, which we will take a look at. Okay, so just, regular background. I started out on the US version of a ZX81. It was my brother's. Then he got a 64. Then I got a 128 at one point. I used that for years. Eventually went to Amiga 500, and then to the most beautiful computer in my mind, the 3000. These days, I tend to spend my time on a couple different sets of computers and 6502 computers. So this CBM2 or the Commodore 700, we'll talk about that today. Um, I still have my 128. And then I've been getting into these new retro computers. The one I ended up on rather randomly is by Phoenix. So this is a person in Canada. She makes them. And I've got a 6502 one. This also comes in a 6809 if anyone's a 6809 programmer. I'm not, but I'm excited to learn about that. There's people who've ported OS 9 to it. And then I like 68K Motorola's too. So I love Amiga DOS 1.3 and 3 and 3.2 and all that stuff. And I love the old Toaster Macs. I don't love programming for them as much because they got all that stuff, memory manager stuff, which drives me crazy. But then just a few days ago, I got another Phoenix, which I ordered like 3 years ago, but since Steph makes them by hand, sometimes it takes a while. This is kind of like the ugly stepchild of the family. Only a few of us like it, but I love it. It's going to be bare metal for me, so I'm going to write OS from scratch. That's got a 6840 in it. I'm excited about that. But today we're here to talk about this guy. So I don't know if everyone even knows what the Commodore 700 is. Sometimes it's called the CBM2, or you'll see B128, B256, BX128, well, not BX128, BX256. A lot of names for this thing. Mr. Shatner there is going to sell to us. So this strategy of this was designed to come out in 1982, timed to be with the 64 launch. Kind of in North America, they were going to pitch the 64 as your home computer, your family computer, whatever. Kind of secondarily, maybe you could use this for business. In Europe and in Canada, but mostly in Europe, the CBM 700 was meant to be the replacement for the PET in the small, maybe the medium-sized business. PET had a lot of market share even in 1982 because the PC hadn't come out, was a year late coming to Europe. And the Commodore folks there were just like dying to have something to replace the PET because it had gotten old. So Commodore came up with this guy. And what is it? Okay, first of all, it's really fast. It's twice as fast as anything else that's a 6502. I'm not sure how fast an Apple III was. Possibly it was 2 megahertz, but since no one bought one, it doesn't matter. It had out of the factory either 128K or 256K, and it could go all the way up to 890, basically a megabyte of memory in 1982. This is a crazy number. I think an Apple II then was probably shipping with like 16K or something. It had 80 columns, so it's got the same lack of graphic capabilities as any PET, 80 column PET. So green screen, 80 columns, text only PETSCII. It has a SID chip though. So again, they haven't launched the 64 yet. The 64 is going to get the SID chip. They have the SID chip. They're going to put it in everything they have. They don't even know how they're going to use this in a business machine. And because it's running at 2 megahertz, you can't like read anything out of it, but it still makes sound. It does not have the horrible slow IEC, thing that, really kind of crippled the 1541s. It has the nice PET IEEE 488 port, so you get all your PET peripherals work and they're super fast. There's a version of this that came with 2 built-in disk drives. It's like a megabyte of storage with 2 disks. It's amazing. It has basic 4 plus. So 4 is the final PET basic. 4 plus is is like that, but even better. And it's got some of the stuff you'd get on a Commodore 128 with Basic 7. Doesn't have the music stuff, and it doesn't have, of course, the graphics commands. But other than that, it's really cool. So it's got this is actually my favorite Commodore Basic ever. And it has a built-in RS-232 because they know people are going to want to communicate. You're not going to need to have a UART on a chip like you might want for a 64 if you want to do faster comms. But most amazingly, it's going to have all this expansion. So it's got coprocessor slots, it's got a big expansion bus, and Commodore is pitching, we're going to sell you an MS-DOS with an 8088 on it. We're going to sell you CPM 86, again, 8088, and we're going to sell you a Z80 CPM board. You can have, in fact, there's a whole brand of these which is going to come with those out of the factory. That's their strategy for this. Unfortunately, the reality is, there's no MMU. So they are trying to make this 6502, which can only address 64K of memory, work for this 896, and they can't quite get it right. And they go through revision after revision of the kernel, and there's timing problems, and it's flaky. It takes them an extra year. So the 64 has been out there selling. It's probably, I don't know, sold 500,000 units or something already by the time this is ready. So it gets ready, and Commodore basically just throws up their hands and surrenders, and they never really launch it. So I'm pretty sure that all the ones in the UK were trashed, like literally trashed. That's what the users group at the time was saying, but I don't know if that's true. I have no idea what happened to the ones that were for Germany. There's a reasonable amount of these floating around Europe, so I don't think they were trashed, but I don't know what happened to them. In the US, they were all sold off to a third party called Protecto, which was what we call like a liquidation service. So they just resold things really cheap. So you could, for years, 83, 84, 85, you could see advertisements like this in black and white in the back of computer magazines, get a 128K Commodore system for, less. There was even a while where they were selling them at the same time the real C128 had come out, and obviously a lot cheaper, right? Protecto was based in Chicago. And so there was a user group that started up around there called the Chicago B Users Group, CBUG. And it had one of these, it had a guy who led it, started it, was kind of crazy, very motivated, wouldn't take no for an answer. He browbeat Commodore into giving him the kernel code and releasing it for these machines. He flew over to Europe and he browbeat the Commodore guy there to let him take out the prototype DOS boards and CPM boards, and he brought those home. He also browbeat a couple of companies into finishing software that they had started for the B machines, but had given up when Commodore dumped it. Fairly amazing story, kept the thing going for like years, like literally 3 or 4 years. So there's actually an interesting little community of people who are like these orphaned Commodore users. Well, what's going on with it today? So there's a lot of stuff going on, and most of it is in this, that I'm aware of anyway, is in this Facebook group, Commodore CBM2. So if you're not in there and you're interested, join. Be great to have some more folks. So Steve Gray is a longtime CBM2 guy. He's been dinking around with just cutting some traces and doing some little basic electronics work on the and seeing if I can get TTL output out. He can. He's been dinking with colors. Vossi is another longtime CBM2 god. I'm not sure if he's created this from scratch or he's recreated one. I know there was a couple high-res boards, one in Canada, one in Germany, I think. He seems to have made one. So it's black and white, but you get, I don't know what this is. This is probably 720 by 350 or something, because this is the high-res text behind it. Pretty amazing. Michal Plieben is in Switzerland, I think. He's got several products here. You can buy these when he's got them in stock. So this one is MS-DOS running on your Commodore, better than the Commodore one. I don't think he recreated the Commodore one exactly. I think he created his own version of it. Seems to be stable. I'm dying to get one if he ever cranks some more out. I don't know if you can see in the back, but kind of in the back, vertically standing up in here, you can see his VGA card. Just a great way to get VGA output. Again, he's using one of the different expansion buses. He also has a CPM card apparently. So a lot of really great stuff going on. Steve Gray with another cartridge for doing a kind of 4-in-1 on the system bank. and Vossi, because if the other graphics card wasn't amazing enough, check that out. That's full color, amazing stuff. Go watch his video. It is incredible stuff. It's such a great time to be alive to see this stuff. People doing all these cool electronic projects with, machines that they're stretching, right? There's also new software. So Space Chase, that came out a few years ago, but that really inspired me to get in and get doing stuff. You can also, there's Lair of the Lich King. That's my game. It's a roguelike. Some people here have done it. You can get that. And I also make some utility software. This is a two-pane kind of like Midnight Commander file utility and browser or text viewer and stuff like that, because that's useful to me. So it'd be great to have other people writing code for it. What do you need to write code for any new computer that you don't know? Well, you need reference material. So let's see what we got. Commodore and the VIC-20 came out, didn't have anything, and then they had a good user guide. But then after a year or so, they got the reference guide. That was 300 pages. Then with the 64, 486 pages, even more, like all this great technical information, everything you need to know. 128 came out, 750 pages. Amazing. Like, just like everything you know, and look, it lies flat and you can just work heavily at it. So surely we've got something as good for the B machines. No, we don't. So you could get this little manual that came with it, shipped with a little manual. It's about 100 pages. There's a couple variants of it, but they're about the same. Really not much information there. You could get what Protecto called the B128 Programmer's Reference Guide, which was typewritten, like on a typewriter. It's pretty unpleasant to work with. And it apparently was written by one of the guys at Commodore UK who was just dying to sell this machine to his customers, and and had been preparing this by himself because Commodore wouldn't write one. He wrote it himself in his spare time, and Protecto and ended up using it. But it's a little quirky because he wasn't a tech writer, and he didn't have access to the engineers. And then the last thing is maybe the CBUG escape. So this is the newsletter once or twice a year from that users group in Chicago. There's actually a fair amount of technical information in here supplied by some users. And some of these, Elizabeth Deal, you'll see her writing articles for compute for years before and after this. So some really good amount of technical stuff. Very, 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 very quirky. Mix of levels because these are users writing stuff in. And that's about it. So I was like, well, I'm writing code for this. I want to have something that I can use. What can I do? Can we not have something better? And I thought, well, maybe I'll just reformat this Protector reference guide so that it's in a nice font and I can read it. And I can like do searches. But I started doing it, and then I started finding things that bugged me and didn't make sense. And sometimes the sample code didn't work and I didn't get it. And I just started then I just got crazy and I said, well, screw it. I'm just going to write a new one. So what I wanted is something that I could have bought in 1982, would have looked like something that Commodore made, would have been as complete as the C128 reference manual, would have been styled similarly. The fun thing I wanted to do with this is to write it as if it was still 1982. So it's got snooty comments about apples and stuff and Ataris, probably, hopefully. If not, I'll add some Atari stuff into it to insult them. It should teach you how to use the computer as if you're a new computer, because a lot of things back then, people did not actually, know how to use a computer. This was often their first computer. It should teach you how to program BASIC because that's what things did back then. But it should also have everything you need as an experienced programmer. So, memory map, kernel breakdown, basic breakdown of every basic function and a statement, screen codes, ASCII codes, all that stuff, everything you need. Try to pull that all together in one place, and it should lay flat so it doesn't close on you when you're trying to type something. So this is what I came up with. This is the first version. It's not quite done yet. I've got some work to do, and this is a few of the pages. But it's got a nice shiny cover and back cover. It's going to be bound. I think in the end, it's going to end up being a spiral bound. I tried to do this disc binding, and I was printing this on an A3. So, one page on each, 2 pages per A3, and then you slice it down the middle. But it turns out it's really hard to actually slice something in exactly the same page width every time. And so the edges of it are kind of uneven. And also the the disc binding, I'll show you a picture of that. It's great, except for that if your paper isn't thick enough, they tend to want to come out, and you don't want to lose pages of your thing. So I'm gonna switch to, I talked to the Mega 65 guys on how they did theirs, and they did on-demand printing, and it looks great. I got to play with one. I would have preferred to have something that was like either the comb binding of the, like the 128 manual. But I think that, you can't get that anymore, and the wire binding is pretty good. So this is like one of my earlier versions of it. Yeah, I'm happy. I think it's going to look great when it's printed. I don't think it's going to cost much more, because it turns out it costs a ton of money just to buy. If you're just a person buying all this paper, it's a fairly expensive just for the paper. So, um, next steps for me, I've got a little bit more to do. I format it to do the on-demand printing. Graphic chapter is done. I got a little bit more work on. I might add something about how to burn your own ROMs, because you could burn your own. You could tweak a the current basic if you want to. I want to clean up the music chapter a little bit. I've got the basic start is done, but I need to write some machine language examples. I try to have machine and basic, assembly and basic examples where, for the advanced chapters, where it matters. Music, obviously, it's a, you want to know how to do that in assembly. I need to rework the RS-232 chapter. Anyway, some stuff there. But what would be really, if there's anyone who's got one of these and is interested, I'd love to have some feedback and even bug testing if people run through it. It comes with a little disk of all the sample programs too, so you don't have to type anything in, although you're welcome to. So if anyone's interested, there's my contact information. Probably the best one is my channel on the Phoenix Discord. That just happens to be the one I'm on all the time. But also the Facebook CBM2 group is good. I have my own Cromware Discord server. That's mostly Lich King. But I do check it fairly reasonably. And then you can email me, but so much spam, I probably will miss it. That's what I got. Any questions?
Many thanks, Micah. It looks really, 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 really nice. I don't know if there are any questions from the attendees. Otherwise, yeah, maybe I have.
Maybe I could add, just for my own curiosity. Sorry, I cut somebody off.
Yes.
Yeah, honestly speaking, yeah, then when I can buy the no, funny question. Yeah, it's the PET machines in Poland are super rare. Yeah, like I would like to have one because it just looks great. Just in my eyes, this is the better times of the hardware design of the computer design by Commodore. But yep.
Yeah, and this is one of their more interesting designs, and it was apparently this was what the PETs were originally going to be like, but the Commodore looked at it, they had this design done, and then they were like, no, that's too expensive, and we have a factory in Canada that can fold metal, so no, and that's why we got the metal 2001 PET shape, because they had a factory that made office furniture out of metal, and they wanted to use it, just Jack being cheap.
Yeah, the Jack way of making business.
Yeah,
as cheap as possible.
All right. Well, if there's no other questions, I think Sebastian, I can get back to you.
Yes, I had one, or yeah, maybe just because it's not clear for me. You mentioned at some point, okay, there will be some printing on demand. Do you plan to just post it on Amazon? Now you can have this printing on demand. Is that the way you plan to do, or is it something, because there you also mentioned manually created with the binding, etc. So it's something that you plan to distribute somehow, or how do you see the, let's say, distribution of this? Because indeed these computers are rare. it's difficult to find. Now you're building something that's really new. It's and that was missing. Let's not make this one also difficult to find, right?
Yeah, no, you know, so like my first thing here is I want something for me. And so I've already been using it and I'm happy, you know, with the stuff I've written, but I want it to be anyone can get to it. So I'm gonna put it up on GitHub for one thing when I get like closer to done. Unfortunately, I didn't really think I was going down this path. I thought I was just making a little thing for me. So I made it in Apple Pages. So, you know, whatever. But at least if I get hit by bus, it'll be there. Yeah, I was planning originally to print them out myself because I was like, there's like 5 people in the world who want this, right? So I'll just do 5. But I talked to the, like I said, I saw the Mega 65 one. I talked to the guy who made it, and I can't remember the name of the company. It's not Amazon, but there's a company that will do it. It'll look great. It'll have color printing, and they have distro in Europe and in the US. So, you know, you won't have to like order it from the US and then wait 6 weeks and pay a bunch of extra tax on it. So I unfortunately I can't remember the name of the place, but it'll be there, right? And anyone will be able to download it as far as I can tell.
Okay, perfect. I'm just thinking that it may also be the starting point for other thing, maybe someone else to taking over from there. But you know, like when you're coding, you can have these in some editors. You can also have your customized code suggestion and these kind of things. Maybe that can be taken from there if the information is difficult to find somewhere else. Maybe, or maybe you would do it. Or I don't know. There is a question posted there from Andreas. Will the book explain why the IEEE 488 on the CBM2 is not compatible with today's IEEE devices which work with PET?
Oh, if I could explain that, I'd be a happy critter. It seems to be that I like the only one I have is the SD to PET Plus. I think that's what it's called. And some things work and some things don't for me. So for me, the directory commands don't work. But if I use fmanager, my tool there, which doesn't use directory, uses, you know, like just DOS commands, it all works. But I know I've got a person in Europe who sets that with the same setup. Well, something is different, but for him, it doesn't work. There's a different PET kind of SD to PET type thing, which I haven't tested yet, and I don't have a copy, but I want to get one. The best explanation I've heard is that maybe the ROMware for the PET to the SD to PET future is just not, it's a little buggy or something. I don't know. But you know, part of the problem with the B machines is that the IEEE 488 port, the timings don't seem to be as lenient as they were in the PET. And there's some stuff where like if you have a printer hooked up, you have to turn it on in a certain order or it doesn't start up, you know. I mean, I don't know the reasons. I'm not a hardware guy. Sorry if I don't have a better answer.
Okay, no, thank you. I'm checking if there are other questions. If not, just one reflection maybe on the Phoenix that you took 3 years to receive. I think you did probably a good deal then, because three years ago with the inflation in the meantime, maybe if you paid 3 years ago and you receive it only now, it's probably a good deal when you see like just the price of the chips and stuff like that, how they have increased in the last 3 years. So.
Wow, that's a good point. And also it switched from being like, you know, a 3D plastic, like a PM, to be like, I got a resin version of it. So it's even better. Yeah,
Okay.
it's a beautiful machine, by the way. I'm really excited. But it's bare metal, so I'm just gonna write everything. So that's also exciting.
Okay. Good. I don't see any more questions, but maybe people can post them in the chat. I don't know how much long you will stay in the call. Many thanks again, Micah. I will stop the recording now.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you.